Winter flood season has arrived. What can we expect as we head into the new year? We'll have these answers and more in the Southeast U.S. edition of the Water Resources Outlook. Okay, so now we're going to look at our past rainfall, and we're going to look at a couple of different durations of that rainfall. And the first one we're going to see is the current 30-day departure from normal. And as you can see from this, the blues and the purples are above normal. And right along the Appalachian chain and going through parts of central Alabama and into Mississippi, we see above normal rainfall, up and around the 4 inches above normal, some 5 inches above normal. So really we've seen some pretty good rain over the last 30 days. One other area that's seen above normal rain is down in deep South Florida, around the Keys and around the Miami area. We've had a rain event down there that brought significant amounts of rain to there. Otherwise, over most of the Southeast, we've been pretty normal, just barely above or barely below in a lot of other places. We look at 90 days, which takes us out a little bit further, and as we've talked about before, our fall has been pretty dry, and even the last 30 days of rain hasn't made up for some of that. It's made up for it just a little bit, but it hasn't made up for it significantly. And so as you can see, most of the Southeast has been below normal for the fall time frame. And as we look at the September through November NCDC climate statistics, you see in the precipitation here that we have a couple of areas that are much below normal, and those are in kind of central Georgia, in the Altamaha Basin, and in the right along the Savannah Basin. A lot of below normal over much of the Southeast, with only a few places being near normal in Mississippi, and they're a little bit above normal, but most of the places near normal in Alabama, and so forth. So it kind of gives you a feel for where we are from a regional standpoint. Now, one thing I want to show you here, this is the potential record rainfall. Looks like we're already above our record for this time of year for Helen, Georgia. And one of the reasons I want to show this is because I want you to kind of see, where we've had the rainfall. The rainfall has been pretty steady over the year. It's not like we've had one rainfall event that has really significantly impacted the Southeast. It seems like we've had consistent rain, and from January 1st all the way through September, it seems like we just kept getting rain, significant rainfall during that time, but not at one period, which is why we haven't seen significant flooding. Now, that's not to say we haven't seen flooding, because we have. We've seen some flooding during that time, but we haven't seen the major flooding that we might expect from a record yearly rainfall. The rainfall has come at fairly even intervals. It came during the summer when we had leaves on the trees and competition for that rainfall, and so that's kind of that's kind of kept us from having real significant flooding during that time. But again, looks like we're going to have record rainfall in Helen, Georgia. It looks like it might top the 100-inch mark for the year as we get to the end of the December. So this is our actual rainfall. This is year to date, and as you can see, we have a couple of white spots along the Appalachians which show 100-inch rainfall in that area. The purple, kind of that darker purple, is showing 80 inches, and this is pretty typical actually from where the rain would be. It's not typical that we would see this much rain. This is, again, much above normal. And in just a moment I'll show you the departure from normal and where that is. But as you can see, over much of the Southeast, we've seen anywhere between 50, 60, 70, 80 inches. We have very few areas that have seen, much below normal. And here shows the areas where we're seeing a below normal. And again, it's along the Atlantic coast. You can see in Florida as we get into very close to the coast of Georgia, a little bit along Georgia, and then up into North Carolina. Otherwise, as we move further inland, you can see in Georgia, especially North Georgia, and along that Appalachian chain, we've seen above normal precipitation. Again, I'm going to mention it again because we've seen all that rainfall, but again, not significant flooding. We've improved reservoir, but as we've seen also over the last 3 months, that conditions can go down very quickly, and that's what I'll show here. Now, Jeff last month in the last Water Resources Outlook showed where our first drought area was showing up in the Southeast. And again, with all that rainfall during the year, and you can see where it was, we still started to creep into drought. So this is our current one, And you can see that where he was showing the drought before, we're no longer seeing drought in that area. We still have some showing up maybe a little bit in South Georgia, or pardon me, South Alabama. And so we see a little bit there, and it's possible that could develop as we go into the winter. But just so you know, even though we've had significant rainfall the last year, as long as we get really dry conditions over a short period of time, things could deteriorate pretty quickly.
Okay, now let's look at what we can expect precipitation-wise across the southeast for the next 7 days. We're going to start the period with an upper-level trough and an associated low-pressure system at the surface, moving from west to east across the area. Alabama's going to start to see rain from this system beginning Friday night, and the system's going to be fairly quick-moving through the area. By Sunday afternoon, we'll see the cold front associated with that low-pressure system along the coast, and still see rain along the coast and down into Florida. But a lot of the southeast by Sunday afternoon will be clear precipitation. Looking into the midterm period, we're going to see much drier conditions. High pressure is going to move in behind this departing system. Probably still see some showers down in Florida along the remnants of that front, but be mainly dry through the midterm period. So looking at the total 7-day precipitation, we can expect to see widespread moderate amounts, almost all entirely associated with that system early in the period. Also see some scattered heavy amounts, especially in the Florida Panhandle. It's going to be due to that low pressure system moving in, pulling the moisture off the Gulf, causing increased precipitation amounts down there. In the Florida Peninsula, we can expect to see amounts on the lower end of this moderate amount, so closer to 7,500 down there. This trough and low pressure system will be focusing everything further northward, so tend to see lower amounts down there in Florida. Looking into the long-term period, we can expect near normal precipitation amounts across much of the southeast, exceptions being in northern Alabama and northern Georgia. Looking at the early part of this long-term period, so generally on Saturday, Sunday, we are expecting another trough to be moving through the southeast, but models right now are painting very different pictures of how that's going to play out. One model shows the trough just basically clipping northern Alabama and Georgia, which is kind of what I've depicted here. Another model, however, shows it digging further south into the southeast and providing more widespread precipitation. So generally what that says is we can expect higher precipitation amounts across the northern portion of the area, but it's more uncertain the further we go out in time.
Thank you, Chris. And with that being said, we're going to look a little bit into the future now. We're going to look at the December forecast from the Climate Prediction Center, and we're good ways into the month now, and they're showing below normal precipitation over parts of Georgia, northern Florida, and that does look possible. And as Chris mentioned, if all depending on how far that front kind of dips down as we get closer to the Christmas time frame. It depends on if that does dip a little further south, then maybe this is wrong. Maybe we get a little bit more rain along South Georgia and along the Florida Panhandle and in that area. But currently, as it looks like everything will stay a little bit further north, and that this might actually happen, that we'll see below normal precipitation in those areas. As for the December through February time frame, you can see that area kind of expands a little bit. Again, the models are hinting at that. We've talked about it before. There's no change in El Nino and La Nina. The Arctic Oscillation, there's a lot of things going on with there, but it's really not impacting our weather quite as significantly as we thought. So for now, it looks like we'll stay below normal. We'll go ahead and go with this forecast, but we'll be watching it very closely to see if any changes, see if any small-scale type things crop up, and that if we start to switch and go to above normal. But right now, a continuation of where we've been through the fall looks like it will continue through the winter. And then as we get into spring, right now there's nothing to sway us either way. We should have equal chances either way of below normal, near normal, or above normal precipitation. So the bottom line, in the short term, there's potential for moderate rain in the southeast, as Chris mentioned earlier. Looks like we're in a little bit of a rainy pattern, all depending on where it sets up. But there still is a lot of uncertainty between the models. So again, we'll be watching that fairly closely. But it does look like, especially in the northern part of our area, we could along the mountains and so forth, we could see some heavier rainfall. The uncertainty comes on whether it's going to slip a little further south and come into South Georgia and the northern Florida area. As for the long term, it still looks like below normal rainfall in parts of the southeast. That hasn't changed. We've been saying that probably since the September-October timeframe. It looks like things were headed in that direction, and it looks like that hasn't changed. There's a consistency in that forecast. Our next full water resources outlook will come early in January 2014. We may have a short update of the models and everything else as we get in. It'll probably be a 4 maybe to 6 minute update on the precipitation and any changes we see. So we'll be getting that to you. And otherwise, have a great holidays, and we'll look forward to talking to you again in 2014. Thank you for listening to this week's edition of the Water Resources Outlook. Remember, you can find much of this information at our website at weather.gov/SERFC. Also, come and visit our Facebook page where we will provide notifications of products we issue. Also, feel free to comment and pass that information along. And if you have any questions or comments, please contact me at the email address todd.hamel@noaa.gov.